You pulled the cowl off Batman's head, and underneath was a regular man's face, and that was the moment the magic started. Because now he wasn't just Batman, he could be anyone. You could take off the cape, peel away the costume, and dress that 8-inch body in Superman's blues or Spider-Man's reds or Robin's bright green, and the same little figure that fought crime in your bedroom on Monday was a different hero entirely by Tuesday. He had real cloth clothes you could actually remove, real boots that came off, a cape that flowed when you made him fly, and for a few years in the 1970s, he was the greatest toy a boy could own. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. He stood about 8 inches tall, which was the perfect size, big enough to feel real in your hand. Small enough that you could fit 3 or 4 of them in a shoebox and carry your whole universe to a friend's house. The body was posable, the arms bent, the legs bent, the head turned, and unlike anything that came before, he wore actual fabric, a tiny stitched costume with a tiny cape and tiny boots, the kind of detail that made him feel less like a toy and more like a real person who happened to be 4 times smaller than he should be. You held him and you believed in him. That was the whole point. That was the magic. These heroes took a beating too, and that mattered. You weren't gentle with them. Nobody was. They got dropped down the stairs, flung across the room in epic battles, buried in the sandbox, dunked in the bathtub, left out in the rain in the backyard overnight, when the streetlights came on before you could collect them. And they survived. The arms popped out of the shoulders sometimes, but you could pop them back in. The costumes frayed, but they held. These were toys built to be played with, hard, daily, for years, not toys built to sit on a shelf behind glass. A boy could love one of these heroes the way a boy loves things, which is to say roughly, completely, and without any regard for resale value. And the hero took it. The hero always took it. That's what made him a hero. The costumes were everything. That was what set these heroes apart from every other toy on the shelf, because the body underneath was the same, a generic muscular frame, but the costume was what made him Batman or Superman or Captain America. And since the costume came off, your imagination took over. You could put Batman's cape on the Superman body. You could mix and match. You could create heroes that didn't exist in any comic book. Villains of your own invention. Teams that never teamed up anywhere but on your bedroom floor. The removable cowl Batman was the holy grail. Pull the mask off and there was Bruce Wayne, and suddenly your Batman had a secret identity that you controlled. You decided when he was the man and when he was the Bat. That kind of power in the hands of an 8-year-old was intoxicating, and the costumes were real. That's what you have to understand if you were never lucky enough to hold one. These weren't painted on clothes. These weren't details molded into the plastic. These were actual tiny garments, sewn from actual fabric, with snaps and seams and a cape that hung loose and flowed when you swooshed him through the air. Batman's cowl was a separate piece of soft vinyl you pulled down over his head. Robin's vest came off. Superman's boots slid on and off his feet. You could undress these heroes completely, down to the bare body, and dress them again, and that act of dressing them, of choosing who they were gonna be today, made them yours in a way that no sealed, fixed, unchangeable toy could ever be. A modern action figure is whatever the factory decided it would be, forever. Your hero was whoever you decided he was, this morning, this afternoon, this game. You started with one. Everybody started with one. Maybe it was Batman because Batman was always the most popular, the one every boy wanted first. And then at your birthday you got Robin because Batman needed Robin, and the two of them fought crime together for a few weeks until you realized they needed someone to fight. So Christmas brought the Joker, or the Penguin, or the Riddler, the villains with their painted faces and their wild costumes, and now you had a real story. Good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains, a whole world taking shape one figure at a time, each one earned through a birthday or a report card or a chore done well enough to warrant a trip to the toy aisle. You remember the first one? Everybody remembers the first one. You remember tearing the box open, not carefully, never carefully. No boy in the history of the world ever opened a toy carefully, and pulling him out and feeling how solid he was, how the arms moved with just enough resistance to feel real, how the cape settled across his shoulders like it belonged there. You remember the smell of the fresh plastic and the new cloth? You remember posing him on your nightstand that first night so he would be the first thing you saw in the morning. And you remember the morning waking up early just to play before school because the hero was new and the stories were waiting and there was never enough time before the bus came. The toy aisle, you remember standing there. The figures hung on the pegs in their window boxes, and you could see them through the plastic, the bright costumes, the tiny accessories, the cardboard backing printed with all the other heroes you did not have yet. You studied that backing like a map. You memorized which heroes existed. You planned your next acquisition. Spider-Man with his web-shooting arms, Captain America with his shield, the Hulk, bigger and greener than the rest, Aquaman, Tarzan, the Green Arrow. 33 different characters across the years, and you wanted every single one. And you knew you'd never get them all, and that wanting, that specific, aching, hopeful wanting, was as much a part of childhood as the toys themselves. And then there were the playsets. If the figures were the heroes, the playsets were the world they lived in, the Batcave, the cardboard fortress with the working elevator and the Batcomputer, and the trapdoor was the thing dreams were made of. You set it up on the floor and suddenly Batman had a home, a headquarters, a place to return to after the mission. There was the Batmobile, sleek and black, just the right size for two figures, the Batcopter with the spinning blades, the Batcycle, and the playsets that did things, the ones with the air pump activator where you pressed a plunger and a wall exploded, or a bridge collapsed, or a tower crumbled, and your heroes had to leap into action. You played for hours. You played until your mother called you for dinner 3 times. You played until the cardboard wore soft at the edges and the elevator string snapped and you fixed it with tape because you couldn't imagine the Batcave without its elevator. And when you finally outgrew it, when the cardboard finally gave out, or you finally moved on, that Batcave had given you more hours of joy per dollar than anything your parents ever bought you. It cost a few dollars. It gave you a year of afternoons. There has never been a better deal in the history of childhood. Your father might have helped you set it up. That's a memory a lot of you carry. The two of you on the floor on Christmas morning, him reading the instructions and you too excited to wait. The two of you assembling the Batcave tab by tab, slot by slot, until the fortress stood complete, and he handed it over to you and said something like, "There you go," and went back to his coffee. He didn't play the way you played, but he built it, he got it standing, and for a man who didn't always know what to say to his son, putting together a cardboard Batcave on Christmas morning was a way of saying something that mattered. You didn't understand that then. You were too busy putting Batman in the elevator. You understand it now. You took them everywhere. That was the beauty of the size. They came with you. In your coat pocket on the way to school, where you'd sneak them out at recess and continue last night's battle on the blacktop. In the car, on long trips, fighting battles across the back seat while the highway rolled by and your parents told you to keep it down. Under the covers with the flashlight when you were supposed to be asleep because the Joker had escaped and Batman couldn't wait until morning. To your friend's house, where his heroes met your heroes and the rosters combined into something bigger than either of you could build alone. He had the Hulk, you had Iron Man, together you had the start of an army, and the afternoon disappeared into a war that spanned the living room, the hallway, the backyard, wherever the story took you. You never ran out of story. The heroes made sure of that. The girls in the neighborhood had their versions too, the super gals they were called. Wonder Woman with her golden lasso, Batgirl, Supergirl, Catwoman, who was a villain but somehow the most interesting of all. And on the days when the boys and girls played together, the whole Justice League assembled on someone's porch. Every hero and heroine and villain that anyone owned lined up for a battle so enormous it could only end when someone's mom announced it was time to go home. Those were good days. Those were the days you didn't know to hold on to, because you didn't know yet that they would end. You traded, too. That was part of it. The kid down the street had 2 Robins and no Riddler, and you had a spare penguin you'd gotten as a double on your birthday, and the 2 of you stood on the sidewalk and negotiated like it was the most serious business in the world, because it was. A hero for a villain, a cape for a mask, a whole afternoon spent deciding whether a Spider-Man with a torn costume was worth a Captain America with a missing shield. You learned to bargain on those sidewalks. You learned the value of things, and the cost of wanting something too badly, and the quiet pride of a trade where both boys walked away happy. None of it felt like learning, it just felt like summer. But they did end. And the thing that ended them came from a galaxy far, far away. In 1977, a movie called Star Wars changed everything, and the toys that came with it changed everything too. Because the Star Wars figures were small, 3 3/4 inches, barely half the size of your 8-inch heroes, and they were cheap, and they were plastic, and they did not have cloth costumes or removable boots or any of the craftsmanship that made your 8-inch heroes feel real. But there were so many of them, and they came with ships and playsets and a whole universe, and suddenly every boy in America wanted a shelf full of tiny plastic figures instead of a shoebox of detailed ones. The man who built your heroes saw it coming and made the wrong call. His name was Marty Abrams, and he was the one who had the idea in the first place. He looked at a generic 8-inch body and realized that if you put different heads and different costumes on it, you could make any hero in the world. He built his company into one of the biggest toy makers in America on the backs of those heroes. And when a filmmaker named George Lucas came looking for a company to make toys for his space movie, Marty Abrams had the first shot at it. He turned it down. He did not think a science fiction film would sell enough toys to matter. It was one of the most expensive words ever spoken in the toy business. A company called Kenner said yes. Kenner made the Star Wars figures. Kenner sold hundreds of millions of them. And the era of the 8-inch hero with the cloth cape was over almost before anyone noticed it was ending. By 1980, the heroes stopped coming. By 1982, the company that made them was finished. The pegs in the toy aisle filled up with smaller, cheaper things, and the window boxes with the bright costumes disappeared. And a kid walking into a store in 1983 would never know that just a few years earlier, the greatest heroes in the world stood 8 inches tall and wore real clothes you could take off. The Batcave went out of production. The removable-cowl Batman became a memory. And the boys who had carried those heroes in their coat pockets grew up and put them in boxes and moved on to the things that teenagers move on to. But you didn't forget. You couldn't. Because some part of you is still on that bedroom floor, 8 years old, peeling the cowl off Batman's head to reveal the man underneath. Some part of you still remembers the weight of the Batmobile in your hand, the feel of the cape between your fingers, The specific joy of dressing a hero in a costume you chose. You remember the Batcave with its broken elevator held together by tape. You remember the friend whose Hulk fought your Iron Man. You remember the wanting, standing in the toy aisle, studying the cardboard backing, dreaming of the heroes you didn't have yet. And here's the thing, nobody tells you about those toys. They weren't great because of what they did. They didn't light up. They didn't make sounds. They didn't connect to anything, require batteries, or do a single thing on their own. They were great because of what you did. You supplied the voices, you supplied the stories, you decided when Batman was Bruce Wayne and when the Joker won, and when the whole Justice League had to band together to save the city. The toy was just 8 inches of plastic and cloth. The magic was entirely yours, and maybe that's why they mattered so much, because for a few years you were the one who made the heroes heroic. You were the writer, the director, the whole universe. Nothing on a screen has ever given a child that much power. Nothing ever will. Maybe yours are gone now, given away, sold at a garage sale, lost in a move somewhere between childhood and the life you have now. Or maybe they are in a box in the attic. Batman with his cowl long lost. Superman with his cape gone soft and faded. The Joker still grinning after all these years. If you find that box someday, pick one up. Feel the weight, pull off the cape, and for just a second, you'll be back there, on the floor, in the light from the window, holding the greatest hero in the world in the palm of your hand, with the whole afternoon ahead of you and nothing to do but save the day. If you had the 8-inch superheroes with the cloth costumes, tell us in the comments, which hero was your very first?